Hello. This video is all about the Vedic New Year for the United States for 2023. Now, the Vedic New Year is what we use in mundane astrology to find out the events that are going to be happening for a whole year for different nations. And I'm going to be looking at the United States chart. Now, the Vedic New Year is not a calendar year. It does not start on January 1st. What determines the Vedic New Year is where the first new moon is in Pisces. And this year, it is on March 21st at 1:22 p.m. in Washington, D.C. We use Washington, D.C. because that's where the capital of the United States is. So I have the chart for you to look at. As you can see, the ascendant or the rising sign is Gemini. And Gemini represents communications as well as travel. And Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Now, Mercury also represents communications and the youth or the younger generation. And Mercury is also the ruler of the fourth house, which is Virgo. The fourth house is our homeland security. It's our home. That's what all this represents. Now, Mercury goes to the 10th house. The 10th house is our government. So what this is telling me is that our government is going to be having to address homeland security issues as well as issues with transportation, local transportation, and how to communicate with each other in order to solve the problems of the nation. Mercury is there in the 10th house. Now, the 10th house is a stellar house. We have got Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, and the moon, of course, because it's a Vedic New Year, as well as Neptune. So what else is our government going to have to be discussing? Well, first of all, there's Jupiter. Jupiter is in its own sign. It is ruler of the 10th, so that means the government. And it is also ruler of the 7th house. Now, in mundane astrology, the 7th house is your opponents. So the nations outside of your borders, basically. We're going to be looking at that. The government is going to be needing to look at that. And Jupiter also represents the truth. So the truth is going to continue to come out. And he is in the nakshatra of Revati. Revati represents, well, many things, but one of the main things is children, foster care. Jupiter is an indicator of children. They're going to be discussing the situation with our youth. And it is going to also be about their education. Now we have Mercury, Sun, and the Moon all in the nakshatra Uttara Bhadrapada. Pisces is the planet of humanity and humanitarian efforts, and Uttara Bhadrapada is also the nakshatra that indicates that. It's a lot like Purva Bhadrapada, but Purva Bhadrapada is very radical. Even though it's humanitarianism and it's radical, it's extreme humanitarianism, and it's my way or the highway, that type of thing. And that's what Aquarius represents in its humanitarianism. Neptune has been in Aquarius for quite some time, and it just moved recently into Pisces. Even though it's still in the nakshatra of Purva Bhadrapada, which is very radical, it's tamed, it's calmed down some because it's in Pisces, which is a humanitarian sign, but it's a calmer humanitarian sign. So what I see with this is that we are still going to be very interested in humanity and in helping each other, humankind, but it's going to be not so radical. And this is going to continue. Now, Purva Bhadrapada also indicates mental illness and two-facedness. So what this means is that humanitarian groups can come forward and be formed, but because they're radical, you're not really getting the whole picture. You're not getting both sides of the story. They say they stand up for one thing when they could really be doing something else behind the scenes. However, that is going to be exposed and that is going to come out because Saturn, being in the 9th house, is going to be going through that nakshatra eventually as he makes his transit into Pisces. And when he goes through that nakshatra, then the truth is going to come out, because Saturn is a planet that cleanses and purifies. His responsibilities, also government and discipline. And so that will bring out the truth, and we'll start to see that. Now, I digress. So let's get back. So what is the government going to be talking about? The government is going to be talking about humanitarianism and what we can do to serve the nation. Now, the moon is there, like I said, because it's a Vedic new moon, but the moon is a ruler of the second house. So we're going to be looking at communications. Again, it's the voice, it's how we say things. And the second house is also finances. So our economy is going to be discussed. How can we make our economy stronger? Then the sun is there. Now, the sun is the ruler of the third house, which is, again, communications, but it's also the media. So the truth is going to be coming out more and more about the media. And so that is something else that is going to need to be addressed. That is what the government is going to be talking about. Our children, their education, the media, humanitarianism, and the protection of our borders. But not only our borders, homeland security, not only from attacks coming from outside in, but also what's going on within our borders. What are the hidden enemies that are in our borders? That's what they're going to be talking about. So Mars is on the ascendant, and Mars is ruler of the 11th house. The 11th house is organizations and groups and the masses. And also he's ruler of the 6th house. The 6th house is our enemies, but they're not hidden. They're in plain view. And it is also health and healing. That's another issue that they're going to be talking about. But with Mars being there in the first house, they are going to have the energy, because Mars is energy. They're going to have the energy to do this. And it's the health and healing of the public, because it's the 11th house. So what is threatening the public? Well, let's look at it here. First of all, we have Neptune in Pisces. Now, Neptune represents many things, but represents deceit and deception, things that are hidden that you cannot see, and addictions. Pisces is a natural 12th house of the zodiac. The 12th house represents enemies that you cannot see, foreign countries, and addictions. It also represents spirituality. Now, let's look at Saturn, which is in the 9th house. The 9th house is truth. So Saturn being there in the 9th house means all these truths are going to keep surfacing. The information that has been hidden from us is going to continue to come out, and we're going to see what's really going on behind the scenes. Saturn is also in Shatabishak. Shatabishak is a nakshatra that represents addictions. Again, but it is the nakshatra also of 100 healers. So what this is telling me is that we are going to have a breakthrough in healing with the addiction issues. And we're going to need to, because I believe that that is our next pandemic. I'll talk about that in a minute. And Shatabishak also deals with the stargazers. So I think what's going to be happening is not only are we going to have breakthroughs in addictions, but people are going to be more interested in astrology and looking to the stars and as an answer to find solutions to their problems. But not only that, the stargazer also represents aliens and UFOs, if I should be so bold, but I'm going to say it because it's there. And there has been a lot of UFO sightings by notable people, that not just the United States, but in other nations. And the government has been covering it up and not letting all that information come out. And I think the reason for that is they are afraid of the consequences of it that will scare the masses. But more and more of that is going to come to light, and we're going to see what's going on there, basically. Also, Saturn being in the ninth house. Now, the ninth house is a house of religion. And I said the 12th house is the house of spirituality. What I believe is going to start happening is more and more people are going to turn back to their higher source, their higher self, God, Brahman, your presence, whatever it is to you. They're going to go back to who they really are, to their roots, what really matters, what really gives them the courage to go on, makes them feel comfortable, makes them feel happy. And that's usually what happens. Out of a crisis, people pull together and they turn back to their higher power. That's going to be happening. I see this happening, especially with the younger generation, because quite frankly, they have been impacted the most by all this drama with COVID. Their schools got shut down, so they're not testing very well because they haven't gotten the education that they deserve. So they're depressed, and a lot of them have lost hope. So they're either turning to God. There's been a lot of revivals that have been instigated by the children, not the adults, but by the children. Or they're turning to drugs. And that's the next pandemic. With all the fentanyl that is coming into this nation, we have got a pandemic of addiction. And it's mostly affecting the children because they are in a vulnerable state. That needs to be addressed. And I do see that there is going to be a reform going on with their education. It's already being started. But this is our future generation. This is the future of America. We have to protect our future, and the children need to be taken care of. The issues with them can no longer be ignored, and they cannot, because they're in such a vulnerable spot, lie prey anymore to the people who want to take advantage of them. We have to protect our children, and I think that's what's going to be happening. Especially with the sun and the moon. The sun represents the father, the moon represents the mother coming together. The parents are going to start to step up and take back the responsibility that they want to take back to raise their children the way they want their children to be raised, and to take care of these blessed little beings. That's what I see going on there. Now, if we look to the 11th house, like I said, with the masses and groups and organizations, we have Venus there, which is the ruler of the 12th house and the ruler of the 5th house. Again, the children. And with Rahu. And on this particular new moon, we have both Venus and Rahu in Ashwini. Now, Rahu expands things. It's where the eclipses fall. Rahu and Ketu, they're not planets, they're shadows where the eclipses fall. But Rahu expands things. And with it being with Venus in Ashwini, Ashwini is the nakshatra for miracle healing. So I do believe that this year can be a year of healing, miracle healing, to heal our nation, to heal the addictions and other diseases that we haven't been able to heal. I think we're going to see major breakthroughs with that. And it's there with Uranus. And Uranus causes sudden changes in things. And he's in Barony, which is all about death and rebirth. And that's what we've been going through. We, as a nation, have been going through a little death, but now's the time for the rebirth. And it's happening. It's starting. The seeds are being planted, and it's starting to happen. And what this will do is, as we come together, we will grow stronger as a nation. That's what I see happening. And the other thing is that Ketu is in Swati, and which is again with the children, which means the children, Ketu is in the shadows. They're kind of minimized, which means the children have been ignored, but that's not going to continue. They're going to get the help they need. And Swati is all about the winds that purify. So it's getting purified. Everything is getting purified, and we're going to have a new beginning. And the thing that I really like about this year is that on April 21st, Jupiter is going to move into Aries, where he will be with Rahu until November 29th, when Rahu moves out. But as I said, Rahu expands things. Jupiter is the children. Aries is new beginnings. We are going to see new beginnings happening. This is a good thing. This is a good year for that. And the truth, Jupiter also represents the truth, coming out and being in the 11th house of organizations and the masses. It's a new beginning for everybody. So the government is going to have to come together. The divisiveness is going to stop. And this is a good year for that because they have to pull together. That is the only way they can lead effectively and make the changes that we need to see made for this country. And Pluto being in the 8th house tells me that the truth about the scandals, the 8th house is scandals, deceit, it's also things that are hidden. And it's other people's money, it's also money. But Pluto being there is going to, because Pluto is a planet also that purifies, he represents the underground, the underworld, crime. He blows things up, big business, things like that. But being there in the 8th house as he's going through that, purifying all these scandals that have been going on, the truth is coming out about them. So again, we are getting an indication of the truth. So this is going to be a good new year. Now, how does it exactly play out with the chart of the United States? So I have the chart of the United States, and as you can see, the ascendant for the Vedic New Year was Gemini, which is the 7th house of the United States chart. And as I said, the 7th house is our opponents. It's other countries. So we are going to be very focused on that. Pisces is the 4th house of the United States chart. That is the house that had all the stellar planets in the Vedic New Year of the government. The government is going to be concerned about homeland security, but not only outside our borders, inside our borders as well. The United States is getting its Pluto return. And I know a lot of people are up in the air about that, and they're very worried about it. It is in the 2nd house of the United States chart. That the 2nd house has to deal with our money and our finances, our economy, but it's also speaking the truth. Pluto being there, getting a Pluto return, means we are getting back to the roots, the principles that this nation was built on. And what are they? One of them, first of all, is free speech. We're going to return to that. We're going to return to Declaration of Independence, our Bill of Rights, and all those foundations that our forefathers built this nation on so that we could be the great nation that we are. That's what the Pluto return means to me. And it also means a cleaning out of the finances, which means we'll be looking at the cryptocurrency and as a form of exchange, and probably looking at the banks and our financial institutions. When Pluto first went into, made his transit there into the 2nd house, is when we shortly thereafter had the scandal with the cryptocurrency. So that's going to be looked at. Now, I don't really predict that it's necessarily going to go away, because it kind of reminds me of back in the 2000s when people were buying .com companies and they were spending a lot of money on .com companies that they shouldn't have been buying or spending money on because they weren't making any money. So a lot of people lost a lot of money doing that. Does it mean that it did away with the .com companies? Absolutely not. But people learned that there needs to be something, some collateral or something to support them investing their money in these .com companies. So I don't think cryptocurrency necessarily is going to go away. I just think that the government is going to regulate it, and that's what's going to end up happening there. That's what we're going to see. Then the United States is also going through what's called a Sati Sati, because the moon is in the third house and Saturn is there. And the Sati Sati is when Saturn goes in the 12th house, house of the moon, and then the second house from the moon. And this is a time that a lot of people are not really very happy about because it causes a lot of changes in their life. And this is a time of purification, and it's not always pretty. It's just like when you do a cleanse. The first couple of days, you're not feeling so good. But when you get through the cleanse, then you are feeling great and fabulous. This is kind of like what Sati Sati is. And it's in the third house of communications, which is also the house of the media. So anything that has been hidden there is surfacing and coming up so that it can be purified. So that is definitely happening there. I think you kind of get my drift on how these things are happening that we're going to be looking at, and it's a time of a cleansing. And there's a couple of other things I want to mention, and that is that we're going to have a solar eclipse in April 20th, as a matter of fact, and it is going to be in Ashwini, and which I mentioned earlier, Ashwini is all about miracle healings. So I think this is a positive thing that's going to be happening. We are going to get our miracle healings. Another thing that's going to be happening is that from August 18th until October 3rd, we are going to be having 2 yods. And what yods are fingers of God. And these are indications of where we need major transformation. There's like many deaths and obstacles, but they're very transformative. And once again, you come out on the other side being a lot better. And the main houses that are triggered for this during this yod are Virgo and Leo. And Virgo is the 6th house of the zodiac chart. It is also the 5th, and Leo is the 5th house of the zodiac chart. 6th house, health and healing. 5th house, children. Again, getting that theme. But when these particular yods happen, Mars is going to be in Virgo. And while a lot of people are saying that's going to be another pandemic, a mini one, I think that is actually when the addiction issues are going to finally come to a head. The pandemic, in my eyes, is already here, and it's fentanyl. But it's really going to come to a head at that point in time because the depositor of Mercury goes to the 5th house. And that house is being activated, which tells me it's going to be coming to a head because we're going to be looking at our children, healing our children, and protecting them. And this is what needs to happen. Mars being there opposite the 10th house of the New Year's chart, the government is going to give them the energy that they need to address this issue. And so that's what I see happening at that time. It's not going to be pretty, but we will survive. We will get through it because this is a year of new beginnings, and this is what needs to happen. We are going to be having another solar eclipse in October, and it's going to be happening on October 14th. This eclipse I'm not too concerned about because it's out of sign, so it's not that powerful. So in a nutshell, if I can sum it up, I'll say this is a very transformative year, but it's what we need to go through to heal. We are on the road. We're on the path to recovery. We are looking at the issues. Our government is going to come together. The divisiveness is going to stop. We're going to be looking at the issues that plague our nation and addressing them and starting to heal. We're going to start to heal from the COVID. It's a year of new beginnings, not only for the nation, but for everybody individually as well. So revel in this year. I know there's ups and downs, but that's the way life is. But it's going to be much better than the previous years that we've been through. I think we've been through the worst of it. So there you have it. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and click all notifications so you don't miss any new videos. And visit me at my website, www.michellebond007.com, and sign up for my free newsletter so you'll always be informed. And book an appointment so I can unveil the mysteries of your horoscope. Again, that's michellebond007.com. Be inspired, be empowered. I will see you next time.